Project Management Methodologies. Presented by Christopher Bell, Kaitlyn Paduano, Daniel Connors, Stephanie Gamache, Garrison Gay, Vinay Patel, and Jacob Mudd. For the fall 2021 term of Project Management, MAN 6581.
Agile project management is defined by a handful of principles that we see here. First, you see customer collaboration over contract negotiation. What that means is you involve the customer throughout the project instead of just asking what they want and then trying to deliver it. Second, you see individuals and interaction over processes and tools. What this means is you value the interaction between team members instead of relying solely upon the normal tools that you would use for a project. Third, you see responding to change over following a structured plan. What this means is throughout the project, you're constantly adapting to other changes that are going on around you instead of just hitting whatever your end target is and then pointing in that direction. And then last, you see prototyping work solutions over comprehensive documentation. What this means is you're delivering products regularly throughout the project instead of just getting all the way to the end and then documenting what you did. A couple of the pros and cons to this process is you see it allows the project to be rethought and revised throughout the process depending on how your requirements change. This is especially helpful in lengthy projects where many of your defining requirements will change before you get to your end goal. Next, you see deliverables are tested throughout the project, so you're really engaging regularly and providing constant feedback. And that also ties to the increased customer satisfaction because they're seeing your process and they're seeing your progress throughout the project instead of just all at once at the end. A handful of setbacks to this methodology are it can be difficult to manage your deadlines because the schedule is moving around so much. It also creates a lot of confusion because you're constantly adapting requirements. Your scope's going to change pretty often. And then last, it's hard to keep consistency if you have team members moving in and out of the project because it's hard to update people on the actual process when it's not very well defined. So overall, this is what Agile project management looks like.
So we look into the principles of extreme project management. There are several principles, three main ones that encompass extreme project management. First is extreme project management is used in highly complex projects that last a few weeks to a few days. To implement this sort of project management, a project needs to be venturing into unknown territory devoid of routine sequential steps. The next trait is that this method is also a fast-paced method with emphasis on short project durations, i.e. usually in weeks or even days. Extreme project management also is known for its flexibility. There is little emphasis on perfection, and budgets and project timeframes are fluid per new information obtained and the project demand. So there are obviously a couple of pros to extreme project management. As aforementioned, extreme project management is extremely flexible. The idea is to have a trial and error process to fit a model to fit a project rather than fine-tuning a project to fit a model. Extreme project management also makes for autonomous decision making. In order to keep up with the accelerated pace of the project timeline, there is very little bureaucracy to how decisions are made. If an error occurs, it is simply addressed, and then the team pivots and then moves forward. There is also very little pressure to complete the project in one go. A project lifecycle can be repeated multiple times before a project's completion. Now, there are a couple of downsides to extreme project management. The difficulty with uncertainty in planning on a concrete budget. Because the time frame is so fluid and information for extreme projects is limited, sticking to budgets are extremely difficult. The same problem exists with setting deadlines. Because a life cycle can be repeated multiple times, the goalpost for completion can be pushed back indefinitely. Finally, extreme project management is successful in low information, high risk projects, but can be inefficient compared to other methodologies when it comes to projects that have plenty of information and have pretty sequential steps.
With the hybrid project management, you're essentially taking two or more different project management methodologies and combining them to create an entirely new method. Managers try to choose the best one to get a better and more efficient way to carry a project to completion. In theory, hybrid project management means you could take a formal methodology and combine with one another to complete tasks, which are continue being developed. They challenge the traditional methods, and hybrid methodologies mean they can be a synergy in combining aspects of new and traditional work approaches. Hybrid methodologies allow for more detailed new approach to work. There are three main factors that contribute to the hybrid popularity rising: complexity and uncertainty. The percentage of projects with high complexity rises, and this is a vivid project management trend. Competitiveness. Today's markets require anticipating competitive issues and influence to ensure we have a strategy and proactive plan to stay ahead of the game. High customer expectations. Ease, speed, and personalization are what customers really expect, even with large-scale projects. There are three key principles we should follow when applying hybrid project management. You may apply in any industry and at any team of size. It's better to run blending at the beginning of the project, and you have to clearly define all responsibilities. At the beginning of the project, a hybrid team gets together and spends analyzing the project's life cycle as well as complexity. We should come up with a work breakdown plan dividing the work top-down into phase and sub-phases. The members should also make space for some flexibility instead of precisely defining each task. Typically, the team plan involves determining short-term deliveries called sprints lasting 4 to 6 weeks. However, with project management, there is also an inability to track deliverables or whether they can set deadlines.
Traditional project management, also known as the waterfall model, is one of the most well-known and practiced methodologies. The main aspect of this methodology is that the project is completed in a sequential manner, where the project is broken up into stages and one stage cannot start until the previous one is completed. This is where the waterfall name comes in, because like a waterfall, the project flows in one direction. This method requires an extensive amount of planning up front before the execution begins, and once the planning is done, everyone's tasks are clearly defined so everybody knows what their job is. This method is most useful when the end goal of the project and stakeholder expectations are clearly defined and are not going to change, along with the project being predictable and consistent. The biggest strength of the traditional project methodology is its simplicity. You do your task and hand over the finished product to the next person. Because it's so simple, there's no prior knowledge or training required for people to use this method. Since its tasks are clearly defined from the beginning, it's difficult to get confused or sidetracked because there is a clear path to complete the project laid out during the planning process. The biggest weakness of the traditional methodology is that its rigidness makes a project unreceptive to changes, so any changes may break the sequence of the project and cause changes in scope, confusion amongst the team, and push back deadlines. Once the stage is complete, the product at that point is fixed and difficult to change because you're required to go back to previous stages, almost like you're swimming up a waterfall. Another weakness is that there's little room for customer involvement once the planning phase ends, because once again, the rigidness of the project means that any changes in stakeholder expectations could derail the project. So if you're going to use this methodology, you need to make sure that everything is set in stone before the execution begins, because any unforeseen changes during the execution can cause significant problems in the project.
When comparing traditional and agile project management methodologies, there are some clear differences. The first and largest difference is the structure. Traditional project management is structured linearly or in a waterfall approach, and as discussed previously, it follows a very structured and fixed approach, whereas agile follows an iterative approach. It is divided into much smaller sprints, and it is far more adaptable. Traditional project management has a lot of time spent upfront planning, whereas agile spends far less time planning upfront, and the focus is far more on adaptability as the project moves on into later phases. Traditional project management is best suited for larger scale projects, and Agile is better suited for small to medium scale projects. In traditional project management, when a problem occurs, the focus is heavily on management to solve it. In Agile, the entire team works to solve the problem. Customer involvement in Agile project management is far higher than in traditional. It starts far earlier than in traditional as well. Traditional management is more about anticipation, whereas Agile is more about adaptation. Agile is far more transparent and flexible than traditional project management. Traditional PM takes a formal and rule-following approach top down to bottom, and Agile is far less formal, allowing for last-minute changes and more flexibility to occur.
When comparing and contrasting traditional project management from extreme project management, it's important to note the different iterations that extreme project management relies upon. With traditional, it's more pass-oriented, and you focus more on that upfront planning, whereas extreme project management, you're focused more on whatever the needs are of the next iteration. Those needs are dictated by the decentralized control of the key stakeholders, and the process is more a servant of the people versus the people being servants of the process. Now, what that means is that traditional project management seems to box folks in, boxes that project into whatever framework and processes have been established, whereas extreme is more malleable and is flexible to whatever the needs are of that specific project. Now, again, this leads more to more chaotic, unpredictable projects versus the slow, stable, orderly projects of traditional project management. But however, this does, again, it's more about effectiveness, it's shorter, flexible, whereas the traditional project management is more aimed at the planned result, that end result, and it's more stuck in that rigid, strict box and following a protocol, again, where the extreme project management is able to be more flexible.
Extreme project management is a form of agile project management, so there are many similarities between the two, with a few noted differences, which I will summarize. The largest difference in these two project management methodologies are the level of involvement with the customer, whether internal or external. Extreme project management involves the customer in the planning stage, but then has little to no involvement through the remainder of the project lifecycle until delivery, whereas Agile involves the customer at most every stage of the project lifecycle. The second difference between these methodologies is the time to deliver. Extreme project management is typically utilized for projects that need to be delivered fast, anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. Agile is used for both short-term and long-term delivery. Both of these methodologies are flexible, and while extreme is used for projects where it is recognized that there will be frequent, fast-paced changes to manage the unknown, Agile, while not quite as adjustable, gets recognition for being highly adaptable and responds effectively to changing requirements. The final difference I will address is in comparing extreme and hybrid project management. I will outline the differences, but first address the similarities beginning with their origin. As discussed in the previous slide, extreme project management is a form of agile project management, and therefore they share many commonalities. It is also recognized that where hybrid project management in theory can be a combination of any two methodologies, it is most commonly a blend of agile with another type. Due to this, there are a few differences in the generic hybrid methodology and extreme project management. The chief difference between these two systems are their structure, where extreme segments the project into small sections that work autonomously and, if possible, simultaneously, where hybrid utilizes the waterfall approach. The second difference between these two methodologies are flexibility. Hybrid project management is flexible, but not to the degree that extreme project management is. The last difference I will distinguish is the level of planning. The extreme project management methodology has little planning to allow speed to delivery.
It is important to note that since hybrid is a mixture of traditional and agile project management methodologies, traditional and hybrid methods do share some similarities, including the fact that both follow a waterfall method and implement the use of work breakdown structures. However, in hybrid project management, the waterfall method is used for upfront planning, and that's where the main similarities to traditional project management subside. After the upfront and initial planning takes place, the hybrid method becomes a far more adaptable process. It shares more similarities to agile project management than traditional project management during the execution of the project. It is broken into smaller sprints, rather than in traditional management where one stage of the project cannot be started until the previous stage has been completed. Hybrid project management allows those smaller sprints and phases of the project to overlap. A change in traditional project management would cause a ripple effect affecting every stage of the rest of the project, whereas hybrid allows for far more adaptability and changes to occur. Essentially, hybrid project management shares heavy upfront planning, but changes to a far more adaptable process as the execution of the project takes place.
Now, when we compare the hybrid approach to the Agile framework, essentially we're just discussing the inclusion of the waterfall approach to planning. As was mentioned previously, the hybrid approach takes elements of the Agile framework in terms of execution, and then it merges that with the traditional waterfall approach to planning, having that planning up front versus having it in multiple sprints, as would be with Agile. Now, hybrid does pull from that Agile framework in terms of having those short sprints. However, as opposed to having more of a tactical approach to planning, it has that planning up front, which is going to be more of a strategic view, a more overarching view, which is going to aid both in the direction of the overall direction of the project. It's going to provide a bit more cohesion amongst the team, and everybody is going to be working towards a common goal. And when comparing that with strictly Agile, the hybrid approach is really going to alleviate a lot of the confusion with deadlines by having them scheduled up front. And then you're also going to have, again, that macro focus to the overall project, which is going to provide that direction to those team members that will ultimately guide their decision making.
Thank you for listening to our presentation regarding traditional, agile, and hybrid project management methodologies. On the screen above, you're going to see the references we used when researching these methodologies. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to our team. Thank you.